Ever get that creepy feeling when someone says Bermuda Triangle?
Yeah, it's like this area that just grabs you.
Totally. And that's what we're diving into today. The mysteries, the myths. We've got articles piled up here ready to sort fact from fiction.
What I find fascinating is how the Bermuda Triangle plays on those deep-seated fears we have.
The unknown, right?
Exactly. But it also gives us a chance to put those fears to the test. Do the stories hold up against actual evidence?
Speaking of stories, we got to talk about Flight 19. 5 Navy planes gone in 1945. That's what really put the triangle on the map, wouldn't you say?
It's the case that cemented its spooky reputation for sure. And for good reason, it involved a whole squadron vanishing, experienced pilots gone without a trace during a routine training flight.
And it was just supposed to be a simple flight, wasn't it?
Yeah, a triangular pattern, taking off from Fort Lauderdale, heading east, then north and back to base. But then the flight leader's compass seems to go on the fritz. You can hear the desperation in his voice over the radio.
Didn't he say something like, everything's wrong, even the ocean doesn't look right? Chills, man, chills.
Yeah, his transmissions got stranger and stranger. And this was before GPS, so that compass was crucial. What could make it go so haywire?
That's the big question, right? I mean, they were trained Navy pilots. They had to have backups.
They did. They were trained to navigate by the stars if they had to. They had maps and charts too, but then you factor in the weather. The Bermuda Triangle is known for sudden, violent storms.
You mean like those white squalls they talk about? I've always wondered what those were exactly.
Yeah. Imagine a wall of wind and rain just appearing out of nowhere. Blinding white spray winds up to 50 knots, forming in minutes.
That sounds terrifying.
They can really catch you off guard. Dangerous for ships and planes alike.
Okay, so we've got a potentially malfunctioning compass, the threat of severe weather, and we haven't even considered human error yet, right? Even the best pilots make mistakes.
You're absolutely right. And the Navy's own investigation, they pointed to a perfect storm of factors. That compass issue, the weather getting worse, and the possibility that the flight leader, maybe disoriented, maybe not feeling well, made a series of navigational errors.
And that led them further out to sea.
Out of range, low on fuel, over the open ocean. It's not hard to see how things could go wrong, tragically wrong.
And without the wreckage.
It deepens the mystery for sure. The ocean floor in that part of the Atlantic is really something. Deep trenches, strong currents. If those planes went down far from their last known location, finding the wreckage, it'd be like finding a needle in a haystack.
It's almost as if the ocean itself wants to keep its secrets. But what about the bigger ships, like cargo ships that have disappeared there? The USS Cyclops, for example, seems like it'd take more than a bad compass and some choppy water to take down a vessel that size.
You're right, those cases make you think about other possibilities, and there's one theory in particular that really sends chills down the spines of even the most seasoned sailors.
So we're talking about ships vanishing in the Bermuda Triangle, and not just little boats, but massive ships. What's this theory that has sailors spooked?
It's the methane gas theory, and it's kind of spooky when you think about it. Imagine, right, these huge pockets of methane gas trapped under the ocean floor, and then boom, they erupt, creating these gigantic bubbles that just shoot up to the surface.
Okay, I sort of remember this from school, but I'm not sure I get it. How could a gas bubble sink a ship?
Think of it like this. Methane gas, it's way less dense than water, right? So if you have a big enough eruption, it's like creating a hole in the water, a zone where things just can't float. The ship would lose its buoyancy instantly, just get sucked down before you'd even had a chance to send out an SOS.
So picture this. You're sailing along, minding your own business, and suddenly, whoosh, down you go.
Yeah, no wonder sailors are afraid of that. But is there, like, any actual proof that these methane eruptions happen in the Bermuda Triangle? Well, that's where it gets interesting. There isn't any direct evidence of a methane eruption taking down a ship in the Bermuda Triangle. Not that we know of, anyway. But recent studies, they've found something pretty wild. Huge deposits of methane hydrates on the ocean floor, right in that area. And get this, they've found these massive craters off the coast of Norway. And guess what? Scientists think those were caused by, you guessed it, ancient methane blowouts.
Whoa, so it's not just a theory, it's actually happened. Those craters are like, hey, watch out, methane explosions happen here. But wouldn't something that big, I mean a giant methane eruption, wouldn't it leave some kind of trace, something we could detect?
That's the million-dollar question. Now, some researchers think that smaller, more frequent methane releases might be happening all the time, but they're not big enough to leave a huge mark, just enough to maybe cause little disturbances. And those could be enough to affect a ship's ability to stay afloat.
So maybe not a giant bubble swallowing a ship whole, but like the water just gives way underneath, like a sinkhole, but in the ocean.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really cool. Remember we talked about the flight leader's compass possibly going on the fritz?
Yeah, the whole weird magnetic thing going on in the triangle. Could that be because of methane too?
Some researchers are looking into that. They think that when methane is released, even in small amounts, it might create little magnetic anomalies.
Yeah.
And those anomalies could mess with compasses and other sensitive equipment.
So not only could these methane eruptions be sinking ships, but they could also be screwing with navigation. That's a double whammy if I've ever heard one. But hold on a second. If methane gas is lighter than air, shouldn't it, like, float up? Go into the atmosphere?
That's the thing about the Bermuda Triangle. It's full of surprises.
Mm.
You see, methane, it is a potent greenhouse gas. If it reaches the atmosphere, it contributes to climate change. But, and this is a big but, some researchers believe that some of the methane released in the triangle might never actually make it to the surface.
What? Where does it go?
It gets trapped, held down by those underwater currents and layers of cold water, creating these pockets of, well, we've been calling them low-density zones, those invisible hazards.
So instead of floating up, it's like a hidden danger lurking beneath the surface. Creepy. But what about those, more out there theories about the Bermuda Triangle, like aliens, Atlantis, all that good stuff? There's got to be some kind of evidence for those, right?
Well, let's just say those theories make for good movies, but when it comes to actual evidence, not so much.
All right.
Don't get me wrong, the Bermuda Triangle has inspired some wild ideas, and it's easy to see why people are drawn to those more fantastical explanations.
Yeah, I get it. The unknown is kind of exciting. It's just more fun to think about aliens and lost cities than, like, boring old science.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, we have to stick to the facts.
Right, stick to the evidence. So while we can't totally rule out the possibility of aliens hanging out in the Bermuda Triangle.
Or portals to other dimensions.
Oh. Or, like, time travel. Who knows? We're probably going to have better luck figuring things out if we focus on the scientific explanations. And so far, what have we learned? It seems like the Bermuda Triangle might be less about the supernatural and more about, well, a really bad day at sea, a perfect storm of natural events, maybe some human mistakes, that kind of thing.
Exactly. When we talk about the Bermuda Triangle, people often forget how unforgiving the ocean can be. Even a tiny little mistake, a mechanical issue, it can be catastrophic, especially in a place known for crazy weather and strong currents.
It's a good reminder that even with all our fancy technology, nature is still in charge.
Absolutely. And one of the best examples of that is Flight 19. Let's break it down even further, look at everything that happened, and see if we can piece together what might have led to that tragic outcome.
Okay, so back to Flight 19. We've got this theory about, methane messing with the flight leader's compass, maybe even causing those crazy white squalls. But there were 5 planes up there, right? All experienced pilots. Shouldn't someone have been able to, I don't know, figure it out?
That's where it gets really interesting. Think about it. This was 1945, way before GPS.
Right, no fancy gadgets to help them out.
Exactly. They were relying on what they could see and dead reckoning. Basically, using their last known position, their speed, direction, to figure out where they were.
Sounds kind of complicated, especially if you're already turned around, maybe a little panicked.
And there's more. There's evidence that the flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, he might not have been feeling 100% that day. Some reports say he mentioned feeling a little off before they even took off.
So he's got a lot on his mind, under pressure, making decisions that could mean life or death. And on top of that, maybe his compass is giving him bad information.
And if that bad information, if it's because of, say, a methane release, well, he's leading them further and further off course, and he doesn't even know it.
And then the sun starts to set, fuel's running low. Man, it's a lot scarier when you think about it like that, and way more likely than aliens, really.
In the Bermuda Triangle, it makes for great stories, but at the end of the day, it's the ocean. And the ocean, it doesn't care who you are, how much experience you have. Make a mistake out there, it can be your last.
It's a good thing to keep in mind. Even now, we might have all this technology, but nature's still calling the shots. So where does that leave us? I mean, have we finally cracked the code of the Bermuda Triangle?
I think we've definitely shed some light on it. We looked at the evidence, considered different explanations, even some of those out there theories, and what did we find?
A lot of strange coincidences, maybe.
Maybe, but it's more than that, isn't it? It's about understanding how things work, how things can go wrong. The Bermuda Triangle, it's not so much about what we don't know, but what we can learn.
That's a good point. So for anyone listening who's ever wondered about the Bermuda Triangle, What should they take away from all this?
Keep asking questions. Don't be afraid to dig a little deeper. The best stories, the best mysteries, they make you think.
And sometimes the answers, they're right in front of us, even if they're not as exciting as we want them to be. Well, that's our deep dive into the Bermuda Triangle. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And keep exploring, because who knows what other mysteries are still out there, waiting to be discovered.